Have you ever wondered what happens when a school decides you're guilty before even hearing your side of the story? When Danielle Carter, a brilliant high school senior, was accused of cheating on the biggest science exam of her life, her entire future was suddenly at risk. Suspended, shamed, publicly humiliated. But what if I told you? Hidden security footage and a few brave allies would reveal a truth no one saw coming. Before we dive into this emotional roller coaster of injustice, courage, and redemption. If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, telling us where in the world you're watching from. Your support helps us reach 1,000 subscribers so we can keep creating powerful stories like this. Have you ever stopped to think how one unfair accusation can flip a teenager's entire life upside down? For 18-year-old Danielle Carter, the day started like any other at Brook Ridge High, a competitive school nestled in the suburbs of northern Illinois. Danielle wasn't just another student, she was the top science student. The girl everyone secretly envied, but also the one teachers proudly showcased. That morning, Danielle sat at the back corner of room 208, her favorite spot. The sun streamed through the dusty blinds, illuminating her curly hair as she scribbled equations in her spiral notebook. Her AP Physics teacher, Mr. Ellis, was halfway through explaining the mechanics of projectile motion when the classroom door swung open with a force that silenced the entire room. Standing there was Vice Principal Mark Hastings, a tall, pale man with sharp cheekbones and a reputation for being, let's just say, selectively strict. "Miss Carter," his voice cut through the air like a blade. "Bring your belongings. You're needed in the office. Immediately." Danielle froze mid-sentence. The tip of her pen pressed so hard against her notebook that it left a dent. The entire class turned to stare. Mr. Ellis blinked in confusion. "Is this urgent? It's urgent." Hastings interrupted, not breaking eye contact with Danielle. "Let's go." Danielle's heart began to race. What could this be about? As she stuffed her books into her backpack, she could feel the whispers already starting around her. Words like trouble, cheating, and finally caught floated to her ears as she walked past her classmates. In the hallway, Vice Principal Hastings didn't speak. His polished dress shoes clicked sharply against the tile floor with every step. Danielle's stomach twisted with anxiety. Upon reaching the administration wing, Hastings opened the door to the disciplinary review room, a windowless, cold space with one table and two chairs. Sitting across from where Danielle was expected to sit was Mr. Carter, her father, still in his construction uniform, eyes wide with confusion and frustration. "Dad," Danielle whispered. Before he could answer, Hastings closed the door behind them and pulled out a thick manila folder from under his arm. "Miss Carter," he began flipping open the file, "you're being accused of academic dishonesty during last week's regional science aptitude test." Danielle blinked. The words didn't make sense at first. "Excuse me. What your test answers, every single one of them matched the grading key, word for word. Even your diagrams were identical in style and sequencing." Danielle's throat went dry. "That's because the answers were standard for that set of questions," she stammered. "They're based on universally accepted models. Anyone trained in physics would approach them the same way." Hastings leaned back, expression unreadable. "That's not how the review board sees it. They find your performance statistically improbable." Mr. Carter slammed a calloused fist on the table. "You called me out of work for this, to accuse my daughter without even talking to her teacher." Hastings didn't flinch. Her teacher is not responsible for academic integrity investigations. That falls under my jurisdiction. Danielle's hands began to tremble. She had spent weeks preparing for that test, working late nights reviewing textbooks and solving practice problems over and over again. Now it felt like all that effort was being erased by a single assumption. "Do you have any real evidence?" she asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "The evidence," Hastings said slowly, "is that your answers match the key to an extent that strongly suggests you had access to it beforehand." Danielle opened her mouth to respond, but Hastings continued before she could speak. "This will go on your permanent record unless you confess. If you admit to the misconduct, the consequences will be more manageable. A 5-day suspension disqualification from upcoming competitions and academic probation." Her father stood, his face red with anger. "You want her to confess to something she didn't do over what matching answers?" Danielle blinked back tears. "I didn't cheat. I swear I didn't." But Hastings only gave a slow, disapproving shake of his head, like her denial was just part of the script he'd seen too many times before. "This meeting is over," he said, gathering his papers. "You'll receive formal notification this afternoon." As he left the room, Danielle and her father sat in stunned silence. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving them alone with the crushing weight of injustice. Her dad finally spoke, voice low but fierce. "We're fighting this. I don't care what it takes. And we're not letting them do this to you." Danielle nodded, but deep inside fear clawed at her. She knew how these things went. Once an accusation like this started, clearing her name would be like swimming upstream during a hurricane. By lunchtime that day, the rumors had already begun spreading like wildfire across Brookridge High. "Did you hear Danielle Carter got caught cheating on the science aptitude test? No way. She's always been like a genius." "Exactly. That's why it makes sense. No one's that perfect without cutting corners." Danielle sat alone at the corner table in the cafeteria, untouched sandwich sitting in front of her. She stared at her phone, scrolling through the countless messages from classmates. Some were filled with pity, others with thinly veiled satisfaction, and more than a few outright celebrated her downfall. Her best friend, Maya Lopez, approached, cautiously dropping her tray on the table and sliding into the seat across from her. "I don't believe any of this," Maya said firmly, eyes blazing with loyalty. "You've worked too hard for anyone to accuse you like this." Danielle forced a weak smile, but said nothing. "Have you talked to Mr. Ellis?" Maya asked. "He'll back you up," I tried, Danielle whispered, but Hastings already got to him. Said all questions about the case have to go through the vice principal's office. Maya's face turned red with frustration. "That's shady, real shady." Before they could continue, Danielle's phone vibrated again. This time it was a message from an unknown number. "Meet me behind the gym after 6th period. I know something about the test day." Danielle's heart skipped a beat. She showed the message to Maya. This could be a trap, Maya warned, or it could be the break you need. Danielle nodded slowly. "I'm going. I have to." By the time 6th period ended, Danielle's nerves were on fire. She made her way around the side of the school to the back of the gym where the maintenance entrance was located. Standing there, shifting nervously from foot to foot, was Aiden Patel, a junior who worked part-time as a student assistant in the school's administrative office. Aiden, Danielle called softly. He jumped, then motioned for her to follow him behind the equipment shed. "I don't have much time," he whispered. "And if anyone finds out I told you this, I'm done for." Told me what Danielle pressed. Aiden looked around cautiously before continuing. "I was doing filing in the front office 2 days before the test. I overheard Vice Principal Hastings talking to Mr. Morris, the testing coordinator. They were talking about sending a message to students who they felt were getting too much attention." Danielle frowned. "What does that mean they specifically mentioned you by name?" Aiden said. Hastings was saying something about how certain students needed to understand that no one is above the rules. And then, later that day, I saw Hastings walk out of the secured testing materials room, with the answer key folder in his hand. That folder is never supposed to leave that room until the day of the test. Danielle felt her stomach drop. You're saying Hastings had access to the key before the exam and was planning something I'm saying. It wouldn't surprise me if someone planted something against you, Aiden said, glancing at his watch. I gotta go, just be careful. They're playing dirty. Before Danielle could ask more, Aiden was already jogging back toward the building. Maya, who had been hiding behind the corner, stepped out, her face pale. Oh my God, she said, they're setting you up. This isn't just an accusation, it's a hit job. Danielle clenched her fists. Then we're going to need evidence. Solid, undeniable proof. That night, as she sat at the dinner table with her dad, Danielle recounted everything Aiden had told her. Mr. Carter sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. We need to lawyer up, he finally said. I don't know if we can afford that, Danielle said quietly. Her father stood and grabbed his phone. Afford it or not, I'm not letting them destroy your future. I'm calling Mr. Bennett my old friend from the neighborhood. He's a civil rights attorney. Danielle blinked in surprise. Dad, you really think it's that serious? Her father looked at her, eyes full of protective rage. Baby girl, when a system's decided you're guilty, you don't play defense. You fight back with everything you've got. And just like that, the Carters' battle for justice began. The next morning, attorney Malcolm Bennett walked into the Carter household carrying a battered leather briefcase and an air of quiet determination. Tall, middle-aged, with salt and pepper hair and a voice like smooth gravel, Mr. Bennett had spent 2 decades fighting cases exactly like this. Danielle, he greeted her warmly, shaking her hand. Your dad's told me what's going on, and let me be clear up front. This is serious, but it's also winnable. Danielle sat at the kitchen table, still in her hoodie and sweatpants, fighting off another wave of anxiety. Winnable, how she asked softly. Mr. Bennett pulled out a yellow legal pad. First, we file an official records request under the Student Rights and Privacy Act. They're legally required to hand over all evidence they're using against you. Test documents, proctor notes, internal emails, everything. Her dad nodded. That'll at least force them to show their hand. Second, Bennett continued. We demand to see the school's security footage from the day of the test. Any room where testing materials were handled any time Vice Principal Hastings entered unauthorized spaces. All of it. Danielle's heart lifted slightly for the first time in days. There are cameras in the administration wing, right? She asked. Correct. Mr. Bennett confirmed. And once we get that footage, if there's even a hint of tampering or protocol violations, we have grounds for escalation. The plan was set in motion. That afternoon, Mr. Bennett hand-delivered a formal letter to the Brookridge High Administrative Office. Vice Principal Hastings barely concealed his irritation when Bennett arrived. This is highly irregular, Hastings said coolly, flipping through the paperwork. Not as irregular as suspending a student based on circumstantial evidence and a personal hunch, Bennett replied, maintaining eye contact. I followed procedure, Hastings said stiffly. Good, Bennett said with a slight smile. Then you won't have any problem providing the requested materials by the legal deadline. As Mr. Bennett left, Hastings stood in the doorway watching him, jaw tightening. Meanwhile, word of Danielle's suspension had spread far beyond the school walls. Local community leaders, especially from the Southside Neighborhood Association where Danielle's family lived, began to take notice. Danielle's mom, who worked at a nearby pharmacy, had to answer questions from concerned neighbors all day. Your daughter. Cheating. No way, said Ms. Grant, a longtime family friend. Back at school, Maya had become Danielle's unofficial spokesperson. She cornered Mr. Ellis after class. "Sir, you know Danielle," she pressed. "You know she wouldn't cheat. Why aren't you speaking up for her?" Mr. Ellis sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Maya, I wish I could say more, but the administration has put a gag order on all faculty until the investigation's over. I'm walking a fine line here." Maya crossed her arms, frustration bubbling over. "You're one of the best teachers here. If you don't stand up for your students, what's the point?" Before Mr. Ellis could respond, another teacher, Miss Franklin, the journalism advisor, stepped out of the nearby classroom. "Excuse me," she interrupted, lowering her voice. "I overheard. If you really want to help your friend, meet me after school in room 117. Maya blinked. "Wait." What Miss Franklin just smiled knowingly. "Just trust me." Later that afternoon, while Mr. Bennett reviewed school policies and prepared to file for an emergency hearing with the school board, Maya slipped into room 117. Miss Franklin gestured for her to sit. "I can't go public with this," Miss Franklin began, "but I've seen enough students railroaded by administration politics to know when something smells bad." She handed Maya a flash drive. "This contains archived emails from the staff mailing list. Someone, and I won't say who, flagged a thread where Hastings discussed making an example out of a high-performing student this semester. He didn't name names, but the timing lines up perfectly with Danielle's test." Maya's eyes widened. This could be huge." Miss Franklin nodded. "Just be careful how you use it. And remember, digital footprints are forever." That night, Danielle sat on her bed, with her laptop open, reviewing the documents Mr. Bennett had gathered alongside the emails Maya brought. Her dad walked in carrying a tray with the hot tea. "You okay, kiddo?" Danielle exhaled slowly. "No, but I'm getting there." Together they sat in silence, the weight of the coming fight hanging heavy, but with one small growing thing between them, hope. By Friday morning, the tension at Brookridge High was at an all-time high. Students whispered in the hallways, teachers avoided eye contact. And Danielle felt every stare burn into her back as she walked through the building for the last time before her suspension officially began. Her locker had been cleared out the night before under supervision from security. The humiliation was complete. At home, Mr. Bennett had already filed an emergency appeal with the Brookridge School Board, requesting an immediate review of Danielle's case. That afternoon, Danielle, her father, and Mr. Bennett sat around their living room when the email notification arrived. "Look at this," Bennett said, turning his laptop toward them. The school board had agreed to hold a special hearing on Monday evening to review the disciplinary action. Danielle's heart jumped. It wasn't a victory yet, but it was something. In the meantime, Maya had been busy building an informal coalition of students who supported Danielle. She created an anonymous online petition titled "Justice for Danielle Demand, a Fair Investigation." By Sunday afternoon, the petition had gathered over 2,000 signatures, including names from former Brookridge graduates, local community leaders, and even a few teachers signing anonymously. On social media, hashtags like Yakosh Danielle Deserves, Justice, and Stopius in Schools began trending locally. But Vice Principal Hastings wasn't sitting idle. At that very moment, he sat in his office reading the petition with a dark scowl on his face. "Little troublemaker thinks she can stir up public sympathy," he muttered to himself. Grabbing his office phone, he dialed Mr. Morris, the testing coordinator. "We need to make sure our narrative stays controlled before the board meeting," Hastings said. "Review your proctor notes. Strengthen your documentation. And let's remind the faculty they're expected to remain neutral during ongoing investigations." That evening, Danielle's father received a call from Dr. Evelyn Green, the only African-American member on the school board, and a professor of sociology at the local university. Mr. Carter, Dr. Green said warmly, "I've been following your daughter's situation closely. I'd like to meet with you and Danielle before Monday's hearing." Monday morning, Danielle and her father met Dr. Green at a small coffee shop near the university campus. Dr. Green was in her mid-50s with kind eyes but a sharp analytical tone. "I've reviewed the initial disciplinary report." Dr. Green began pulling out her own folder. "There are several procedural red flags, such as Mr. Carter asked." "First," she continued, "there's no documented interview with Danielle before the suspension decision was made. Second, there's no teacher input from Mr. Ellis, her AP Physics teacher. And third," she paused for emphasis, "there's a complete lack of objective evidence beyond answer key similarity." Danielle sat up straighter. "Is that enough to help my case?" "It's enough to raise serious questions about the fairness of the process," Dr. Green replied, "especially when paired with the information your attorney submitted." Before leaving, Dr. Green offered one final piece of advice. "When you speak at the hearing, Danielle, tell your story, not just facts. Make them feel the human cost of this accusation. Make them see the girl they're about to destroy over bias and assumptions." That night, the Brookridge School Board meeting room was packed to capacity. Parents, students, teachers, and reporters filled every available seat and spilled into the hallways outside. Danielle sat with her dad and Mr. Bennett at the front, heart-pounding. At the opposite table sat Vice Principal Hastings, flanked by Mr. Morris and two district lawyers. At exactly 6:00 p.m. Board, President Laura Whitaker called the meeting to order. "Tonight, we are here to review the disciplinary action taken against Danielle Carter," she began. "All parties will have the opportunity to present statements and evidence. The board will deliberate and reach a decision by the end of this session." As the formalities began, Danielle took a deep breath, squeezing her dad's hand under the table. This was it, her moment to fight back. The boardroom air felt thick, almost electric, with tension. Vice Principal Hastings was the first to present. With practiced calm, he stood and began clicking through a prepared PowerPoint presentation. "Members of the board," he began, "the integrity of Brookridge High's academic reputation is paramount. Unfortunately, we had to take swift action when irregularities surfaced regarding Miss Carter's performance on the Regional Science Aptitude Test." He pointed to a projected graph showing Danielle's answer sheet compared side by side with the official answer key. "As you can see, the overlap is statistically improbable." Murmurs rippled through the room. Furthermore, Hastings continued, "Our testing coordinator, Mr. Morris, submitted a Proctor report indicating that Miss Carter appeared distracted and frequently looked around the room during the exam." Danielle's jaw tightened. That was a blatant lie. She remembered focusing entirely on her paper. Next, Mr. Morris took the floor. In a monotone voice, he repeated much of what Hastings had said. "No students were permitted near the testing materials before the exam," Morris insisted. "And I noticed Miss Carter looking up multiple times, which I logged as suspicious behavior." Mr. Bennett scribbled a note and slid it across to Danielle. "Stay calm. Let them talk. Then we dismantle it piece by piece." When Hastings finished board, President Whitaker nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Hastings. Now, Miss Carter, Mr. Carter, and Mr. Bennett, you may present your defense." Danielle stood slowly, her knees trembling slightly, but her voice when she spoke came out clear and steady. "Good evening," she began, locking eyes with each board member one by one. "I've attended Brookridge High for 4 years. I've earned top grades in every science class. I've won regional competitions. I've tutored struggling students after school. My teachers know my work ethic. My classmates know how much time I put in." She paused, taking a breath. "I didn't cheat. I earned that score. And the idea that my success is being called suspicious just because it exceeded expectations hurts more than I can put into words." A few board members nodded silently, their faces softening. Mr. Bennett rose next. Ladies and gentlemen, he began his tone smooth but powerful. Let's talk about evidence. So far, all you've seen is an answer key comparison and a subjective comment about Danielle's body language during the test. He clicked his own presentation on the screen. However, here's what the school conveniently didn't mention. First, he showed copies of Danielle's practice test scores from months prior, all in the top percentile. Next, he revealed email excerpts provided anonymously. Thank you, Maya and Ms. Franklin, showing Vice Principal Hastings making troubling remarks about certain students needing a wake-up call. Gasps filled the room. But the real turning point came next. We also filed an urgent request for school security footage, Mr. Bennett said. We'd like to play a clip from the administration wing, 2 days before the exam. The projector flickered. On screen, everyone watched as Vice Principal Hastings was caught on camera, entering the secured testing materials room alone without logging entry and carrying out the folder containing the answer key. The timestamp was clear. The footage undeniable. Hastings' face turned pale. Mr. Bennett paused the video dramatically. Members of the board, why would the vice principal need unsupervised access to testing materials 2 days before the exam? And why was this fact omitted from all internal reports? The room fell into stunned silence. Hastings opened his mouth to respond, but Mr. Bennett raised a hand. We're not done. He then displayed statements from Danielle's classmates and teachers attesting to her academic integrity, as well as a sworn affidavit from Aiden Patel, the student assistant who overheard Hastings discussing plans to send a message. Dr. Green, seated among the board members, leaned forward. Vice Principal Hastings cared to explain. Hastings' lips quivered, but no words came out. Board President Whitaker cleared her throat. We'll recess for 15 minutes before reconvening for deliberation. As board members filed out, Maya squeezed Danielle's hand from the audience. You did it, she whispered. Danielle shook her head, barely holding back tears. Not yet, she said. But I hope soon. 15 minutes later, the school board members filed back into the room, their faces grave but determined. President Whitaker called the meeting back to order. After reviewing the new evidence and discussing the procedural failures at length, she began. The board has reached a decision. Danielle's heart felt like it was pounding in her throat. We hereby rescind the suspension of Danielle Carter, Whitaker announced. All disciplinary records relating to this incident will be expunged from her file immediately. A wave of gasps and murmurs rippled across the audience. Danielle's dad exhaled loudly, pulling her into a fierce hug. Maya jumped to her feet, clapping, before quickly covering her mouth when she realized it wasn't technically allowed. But Whitaker wasn't finished. Furthermore, she continued, glancing down at her notes. We will conduct a full investigation into the conduct of Vice Principal Hastings regarding this matter. Effective immediately, Mr. Hastings is placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. The room went silent again, this time from sheer shock. Hastings rose from his seat, face flushed deep red. This is a mistake. You're letting one-sided evidence cloud your judgment. Dr. Green spoke next, her voice steady but sharp. What's clouded, Mr. Hastings, is your ability to see your own bias. This board has a duty to protect every student, including those who challenge outdated expectations. Security escorted Hastings out as murmurs grew into applause, louder and louder, with every step he took toward the exit. After the meeting adjourned, dozens of people surrounded Danielle, offering hugs, apologies, and congratulations. Several teachers approached quietly, including Mr. Ellis, who looked genuinely emotional. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner, he told her. I should have trusted my instincts. You've always been one of the most honest students I've taught. Danielle nodded, blinking back tears. I get it, she said. But next time, be louder. The following morning, Brookridge High felt like an entirely different school. When Danielle walked through the main entrance, students who had once whispered behind her back now offered encouraging nods, high fives, even applause. Maya met her by her locker, grinning ear to ear. "Girl, you're a legend now," she teased. "You broke the system and survived." Danielle chuckled. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I still have calculus homework due." "True, but now you're doing it as the girl who took down Vice Principal Hastings." The day flew by, with teachers treating Danielle with newfound respect. Even Miss Franklin gave her a quiet thumbs up in the hallway. By lunch, the local news van had shown up outside the school gates, reporters eager to get quotes for the evening broadcast. Mr. Bennett advised Danielle to decline interviews for now, focusing instead on regaining her academic rhythm. But as Danielle sat at her usual lunch spot, Maya pulled out her phone and grinned. "You should see the school subreddit," she laughed. "Someone made a meme of you as Katniss from The Hunger Games. Caption says, 'The girl who defied the principal.'" Danielle laughed for the first time in days. "Great," she said with mock sarcasm. "Just what I need, internet immortality." That afternoon, an unexpected email arrived in Danielle's inbox. Subject, from someone who should have spoken up. Sooner, the message was from Aiden Patel. It read, "I'm sorry I stayed quiet for so long. I just wanted you to know. What you did helped more people than you realize. Hastings has been intimidating students for years. Maybe now, things will finally change." Danielle stared at the screen, a lump forming in her throat. Maybe this wasn't just about her, after all. Maybe it was about every student who'd ever felt powerless. And maybe this was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, the ripples from Danielle's case continued to spread through Brookridge High. A special committee was formed to review all disciplinary actions from the past 5 years, searching for patterns of bias or misconduct. Students who had previously stayed silent about unfair treatment by Hastings and other administrators began coming forward. Anonymous surveys flooded in, old emails surfaced. Whisper networks among students and faculty grew into open discussions. One Friday afternoon, Danielle found herself summoned to the principal's office, but this time under completely different circumstances. Principal Laura Chen, who had taken over in Hastings' absence, greeted her with a warm smile. "Danielle, come in," she said, gesturing toward the seat across from her desk. Danielle sat unsure of what to expect. "I wanted to personally apologize," Principal Chen began, "for what you went through. This school failed you, and while we can't change the past, we're committed to doing better moving forward." Danielle nodded silently, still processing the shift in tone and treatment. Chen continued, "The board has also recommended that we establish a student advocacy council, and we'd like to invite you to be one of its founding members." Danielle blinked. "Wait, you want me to help design school policy?" "Exactly," Principal Chen smiled. "We want students' voices at the table, real voices, not token ones." Danielle felt a slow, genuine smile spread across her face. "I'd be honored," she said. Later that evening, as she sat on her bedroom floor surrounded by textbooks and study notes for the upcoming statewide science competition, Danielle's phone buzzed with a notification. It was a text from an unfamiliar number. "Hey, it's Tyler. I know we don't know each other well, but I just wanted to say what you did took guts. Thanks for making this school better for all of us." Danielle smiled at the screen, typing back a simple, "Thanks. And don't forget, finals are next week. Keep studying." At school, Maya had fully embraced her role as Danielle's unofficial PR manager. She convinced Danielle to write an op-ed for the school newspaper titled, "What Fairness Really Looks Like Lessons from an Unfair Accusation." The article went viral within the district. Other students from neighboring schools began reaching out, sharing their own stories of unfair discipline and bias. One message stood out. A senior from a different high school wrote, "Thank you for telling your story. Last year, I almost got expelled for something I didn't do. Seeing you fight back, it gives me hope." Danielle saved the message, rereading it more than once. The night before the state competition, she sat at the kitchen table with her dad. "You ready for tomorrow?" he asked, sipping his coffee. Danielle nodded. "More ready than I've ever been." Her dad smiled proudly. "No matter what happens, remember this: you already won something way bigger than a science trophy." Danielle chuckled. "Yeah, but I wouldn't mind winning both." They laughed together, the heaviness of the past month finally lifting at least a little. As she packed her calculator and notes for the competition, Danielle paused for a moment, looking at her reflection in the window. The girl staring back at her wasn't just a top student anymore. She was an advocate, a fighter, and most importantly, she was still standing. The day of the state science aptitude competition arrived with clear skies and crisp autumn air. Danielle stood backstage at the auditorium wearing her favorite navy blue sweater and clutching a small lucky charm her mother had given her years ago. Her dad, Maya, and even Mr. Bennett sat in the front row waving supportively when she peeked through the curtain. One by one, students from all over the state presented their solutions to complex scientific problems. But when Danielle's name was called, the applause was louder than she expected. Even students from rival schools seemed to know her story. She took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. Her presentation focused on algorithmic bias in educational assessments, weaving in real-life scenarios of how testing systems, human and digital, can unintentionally disadvantage minority students. Her voice was steady, her logic airtight, and her examples compelling without sounding bitter or angry. When she finished, the judges sat in stunned silence for a brief moment before leading a standing ovation. Later that evening, during the awards ceremony, Danielle was announced as the state champion. Her name echoed across the auditorium as she walked to the podium to accept her medal. In her brief acceptance speech, she looked out at the audience and said, "I hope my journey reminds all of us that academic excellence shouldn't have a color or a stereotype. Every student deserves to be evaluated on their work, not on assumptions about who they are or where they come from." The crowd erupted in applause. Back at home that night, sitting on her bedroom floor, Danielle scrolled through social media posts. Messages of congratulations, hashtags celebrating her victory, and news articles highlighting both her win and the school injustice that led to her public spotlight. Her inbox was full of university recruiters, science organizations, and advocacy groups wanting to connect. Among the many messages was one that caught her eye. Sender, Dr. Evelyn Green. Subject opportunity, Danielle. We'd love to have you as a student speaker at next month's Educational Equity Conference at the university. Your story is exactly the kind of real-world perspective we need. Danielle smiled, heart full but steady. The girl they had tried to tear down had not only survived, she had turned the worst moment of her high school life into a platform for change. As she turned off her desk lamp and settled into bed, one thought lingered in her mind. This wasn't just her victory. It was for every student who had ever been doubted, sidelined, or told they didn't belong. And tomorrow, the fight for fairness would continue. Danielle's story is more than just about clearing her name. It's a reminder that bias, whether intentional or not, can derail the futures of students who deserve better. But it also shows us something powerful. When you stand your ground, speak your truth, and find the courage to fight back, change is possible. If this story inspired you, please like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel to help us reach our goal of $1,000 subscribers. The more support we get, the more real-life stories like Danielle's we can bring to light. Together, let's build a platform that champions justice one story at a time.